Chapter 27. The Sudden Passing of My Mother, 1983. When I wrote those fateful words, "Oppose Chairman Mao," in kindergarten, I braced myself for punishment. I waited for my father's fury. Another wooden ruler, another storm. But nothing came, not a word. I lived with the silence for years, unsure of what had happened behind adults' closed doors. Had I brought trouble to our home? Had my parents suffered because of me? I never dared to ask. Years passed. My father passed away. I left for the army. Then came my return to Shanghai. My mother, radiant with joy, welcomed me home. The weight she had carried all those years seemed to lift. Her son had come back. When I received my first paycheck, I handed it to her in full. It wasn't all about money. It was my way of saying, "I'm home now. I'll take care of you, Mom. No more hardship. No more struggle. I want to make up for all the years you carried us alone." One warm summer evening, as we sat on the balcony, relaxed in the golden light of dusk, she turned to me and asked in a quiet voice,
"Xiaofeng, do you still remember what happened in kindergarten?"
Her question floated gently in the air like a breeze, but inside me it crashed like thunder. How could I forget? Not one day had passed in 15 years without that memory rising like a ghost. I turned to her, my throat tight, and nodded. She looked into the distance, her eyes filled with something older than sorrow.
"After that,"
she said,
"your father and I were investigated. They said a child as young as you couldn't have written such a counter-revolutionary slogan unless he had been taught."
Her voice was so calm, so even.
"I was demoted from my department and sent to perform manual labor. Your father was sent to a salted vegetable factory in Pudong for re-education."
I had suspected, but hearing it from her lips, spoken so simply, was like a knife to the heart. I sat in silence, unable to utter a word. It was my fault. I was guilty. The pride they had once felt in me, my cleverness, my talent, all of it had become their undoing. It was my handwriting, my words, that had torn our family apart. I had literally killed my father. And yet, my mother, my poor, gentle mother, she had borne it all. For 15 years, she had carried that weight alone. She never told me. Not once. Not because she had forgotten, but because she had wanted to protect me, to shield me from the crushing guilt, to let me grow up free from the burden of knowing. Oh, Mother, what kind of love is that? What kind of strength? Even now, decades later, I cannot think of her without tears. She never raised her voice, but in that moment, she stood like a mountain between me and the storm. She was the quiet shield who bore the cost of my freedom. And I will spend the rest of my life, every word I write, every breath I take, trying to be worthy of that love. No matter how much trouble I had caused my parents or how many hardships I had unwittingly brought upon them, my mother's trust in me never wavered. She treated me as an adult long before I became one, placing on me, without words, the quiet expectation that, as the eldest son, I would one day shoulder the role of a father. She never doubted me, never withheld her respect. And that unwavering belief, given freely and without condition, shaped the man I became. She gave me that respect not because I earned it, but out of love. After my father's passing, she began teaching me how to manage the family finances. I was only 13 or 14 when she sat me down and showed me our household ledger. Together, we reviewed the monthly expenses, discussed the budget, and counted the ration coupons. She spoke to me not as a child, but as an equal her partner in survival. No matter how carefully she planned, our income was always stretched to the limit. Sometimes it felt like we were teetering on the edge of desperation. But when I thought we would be swallowed by poverty, she would find a way somehow to pull us back from the brink. From her, I learned discipline. From her, I learned endurance. After joining my school's basketball team, my shoes quickly wore out due to frequent practice. Our coach, Mr. Zhang, required every player to buy their own basketball shoes, each costing around 20 yuan. My mother earned 65 yuan a month, which wasn't that bad, but barely enough for our family of 4, particularly since she also sent money to support my grandparents in the countryside. I wrestled with the decision to ask her for weeks. When I finally mustered the courage, she listened without saying a word, no scolding, no denying. I could see the anguish in her eyes, the feeling of helplessness. She wanted to provide what I needed, but financially she simply couldn't. This brought her to the verge of tears, so I quickly changed the topic. I shared my truth with Coach Zhang. She handed me a pair of worn, school-issued shoes. As I was finishing high school, I decided to go to the daunting Haifeng farm, and my mother did not protest. She refrained from appealing or trying to intervene, though I could tell it hurt her deeply. Silently, she prepared for me what might be a last farewell. She acted this way because she honored her son's choice, regardless of the circumstances. Later, while I served in the army, she endured an entire year without seeing me, before finally making the difficult journey with my younger brother to visit my remote barracks in the Anhui Mountains. It was not an easy journey. Taking leave for personal reasons was not only a burden but also nearly impossible for a government worker. But she did it, because she was my mother, and a mother's love knows no obstacles. She raised us, my younger sister, my younger brother, and me, bearing every burden with quiet strength. When university entrance exams resumed after the Cultural Revolution in 1977, my sister passed with flying colors. She was admitted to one of the best schools, East China University of Science and Technology. 3 years later, my younger brother earned a place at Fudan University. And me? I returned to Shanghai and found my footing in the municipal government. For the first time since my father's death, my mother could finally breathe. For the first time in years, she had hope. One summer afternoon in 1982, we were on a train heading to my father's hometown in Juji. We sat side by side chatting quietly. Then, out of nowhere, she turned to me and asked,
Xiaofeng, do you have a girlfriend?
I was stunned. I had just turned 23. I had only recently returned to Shanghai after years in the army. A girlfriend? I hadn't even thought about it. Her question brought back an old memory that had never left me. It was early morning. We were training in the indoor gymnasium, and during a short break, I stepped outside to get some air. It had been raining heavily. As I sprinted back toward the gym, I leapt over an obstacle, unaware of a jagged sheet of metal protruding from the upper edge. I didn't feel anything, but my teammates all turned, and their faces twisted in horror. The metal had sliced into the corner of my right eye. Blood poured down my face. The wound was deep, at least 1.5 centimeters long, nearly 0.5 centimeter deep. I might have lost my eye if it had been just 1 millimeter closer. Coach Zhang rushed me to the hospital, along with a teacher and 2 classmates. The young doctor on duty barely glanced at me.
How did you get hurt? Being naughty?
He asked casually, dabbing red medicine onto the wound. He didn't stitch it. He only pressed a gauze pad over my eye and sent me home. Only much later did I realize that he should have sutured it. However, perhaps the procedure was too difficult for the young staff on duty that day. Or maybe back then they didn't care about something as trivial as a boy's facial scar. That evening, when I walked through the door, my mother was in shock when she saw me transformed into a one-eyed Captain Cook. She took one look at me and gasped. Then she sighed.
What else?
She said softly.
Oh, what can we do? I may not be able to find a girlfriend for you.
That was my mother. Always practical. Always bracing for the next loss. Always seeing life through the lens of survival. And now, years later, she was still thinking of my future, still worrying and still hoping, still loving me in her quiet, steadfast way. Mom had visited me at the Jinjiang Hotel once, but her face lit up with pride when I walked her through those elegant halls and gardens. She beamed, taking in every detail as if she were walking through a palace. Her son, whom she had raised alone, now worked in Shanghai's most elite government office. For her, that visit was more than a moment of joy. It was a moment of triumph, but she would never have the chance to meet my future wife. In April 1983, she was busier than ever, constantly traveling for work and shuffling between her office and various field assignments. She complained now and then of discomfort in her abdomen.
"Something doesn't feel right,"
she murmured.
"I should probably see a doctor."
But there was always a report to finish, a meeting to attend, or a responsibility that took precedence, until one day she couldn't bear it anymore. That morning, she finally asked me to take her to the hospital. We arrived early. The doctor ordered a blood test. Routine, he said. However, within an hour, I was summoned to his office. He shut the door behind me. His face was tight.
"Liver cancer,"
he said flatly.
"Late stage. She has 3 weeks left."
His words were like iron falling from the ceiling, crushing everything. The doctor told me that because she was going to die with no cure, they could not admit my mother. Hospitals were to heal the patient, not to provide a space for the dead. I stood there frozen for a long time until I walked back into the waiting room like a ghost. Mom sat on a wooden bench, hunched forward, her purse clasped tightly in both hands. She didn't look up, but as soon as I approached, she said to me, almost in a whisper, almost out of breath,
"I don't want to go home. Please, don't send me home."
Her voice trembled. She knew. I knelt in front of her, my throat dry, my mind in chaos. This woman, who had sacrificed everything, who had never once complained, who had fought for her children every single day, was now being turned away by the very hospital that was supposed to care for her. Not because they lacked space, not because they lacked medicine, but because terminal patients would lower their recovery quota. That's what it came down to. Statistics. Her life, her remaining 3 weeks, didn't fit their numbers, so it was easier to discard her. And I, her son, working for the Shanghai municipal government and surrounded by power and privilege, was completely helpless. I forced a smile. "Just wait here," I said gently. "I'll make arrangements." She nodded, exhausted. Then I turned and ran. By the time I reached my bicycle, I couldn't hold it any longer. The moment my hands touched the handlebars, my composure collapsed. Hot tears spilled down my face. Was this real? Was I about to lose my mother just like this? Was this how it would end? It wasn't fair. It wasn't just. It is not fair. Is there a God? Where is God? There is no God. I was silently screaming inside as tears streamed down my face. I ran straight to my office and stormed into Director Hu's room. "Director Hu," I said, gasping. "I'm sorry to bother you. My mom was sick and dying, yet the hospital wouldn't admit her. They said, 'She's too far gone. Can you help?'" The words barely left my mouth before his hand slammed on his desk.
"What kind of bullshit is this?"
he roared, his whole body jolting forward with fury. Before I could continue, he grabbed the red phone from his desk and dialed the Health Bureau party secretary. A woman answered.
"The secretary is napping. Can you call back later?"
Director Hu's face turned red.
"A dying person needs a hospital, and he's taking a goddamn nap. Wake him up. Now."
The entire office fell silent. Moments later, the secretary was on the line. Hu wasted no time.
"I have a terminal patient being refused treatment at your hospital. You fix this. Immediately."
Director Hu barked a few more words. I saw the shift on his face he had gotten through. He hung up and looked at me, jaw tight.
"Go now. Back to the hospital,"
he said.
"The deputy director is waiting. He'll find you a bed. And use my car."
Without another word, I got into Director Hu's car. The Health Bureau's deputy director, who had once served as the hospital's head, was now waiting for me. His face was dark, his tone colder than the spring rain outside. It was clear he wasn't happy about being forced into this. Then, without looking at me, he said,
"The hospital doesn't usually admit terminal patients, but we'll make an exception if the family consents to an autopsy after death."
I froze again. I knew exactly what he was doing. It was an unspoken rule in China. Nothing came free. If you wanted something the system didn't want to give, you had to offer something in return. And now my mother's body was the price. I could fight with the privilege of a red phone. I could refuse with the power of Director Who, but I was tired. Rage wouldn't change anything. Outrage would buy us nothing. My mother didn't need our anger. She didn't need our pride. She just needed a bed. Let them take what they wanted. All I wanted was for my mother to rest in peace, in dignity, even if the cost was one final insult. On April 27, 1983, at precisely 7:30 a.m., my mother left our home. She never came back. From the north of Shanghai to the hospital in the far south, she endured the long, punishing journey, transferring from one overcrowded bus to another, dragging along a body already failing her, and a spirit now forced to face an irreversible sentence. By the time we secured a bed after calls had been made, favors cashed in, tears shed, and dignity surrendered, my mother finally lay down. And just as the doctor had predicted, she would remain there for 3 weeks. I stayed with her day and night. My younger sister and brother arrived after work and school, taking turns to stay by her side. Then, one evening, as the light softened outside and the corridors grew quiet, I sat by her bed. She was in a deep sleep. Gradually, Mom opened her eyes, turned her head toward me, and asked gently,
"Can you find crab? I want to eat some."
Her voice was childlike, soft and hopeful, as if she were asking for a dream. My chest tightened. She knew. She knew the time was near. Crab had always been her favorite, and now it was May off season. Even if I could find it, the doctor had warned against these reactive foods. But I knew this wasn't about food. It was about memory, about comfort, about love. And I knew this was her last wish. I went to the doctor. He shook his head slowly.
"She doesn't have long. Do what you think is best."
I went straight to the Jinjiang Hotel. When Director Hu heard what I needed, he didn't hesitate. He picked up the phone, spoke a few words, and within minutes, the manager of the Jinjiang Club retrieved a precious cache of frozen crab meat from deep storage. In those days, it was a delicacy reserved only for state banquets, far beyond the reach of ordinary people. That night, I prepared it myself scallion-stirred crab meat, as she liked it. When I brought the dish to her bedside, her eyes lit up. She reached for the chopsticks. She took a bite, chewed slowly, and closed her eyes. Then she smiled.
"How is it, this delicious?"
she whispered.
"I've never had crab meat this good in my entire life."
She ate more than I'd seen her eat in months, and for a few brief minutes the pain disappeared. The sickness faded. The weight of death lifted. She smiled. And for me, that moment, that smile, was everything. Days later, the doctor called us aside.
"The jaundice has spread,"
he said quietly.
"It won't be long now. Try to avoid physical contact."
The words felt cold, clinical, so at odds with the warmth we longed to give her. I returned to her bedside, watching her closely. Her skin had deepened into a golden yellow, the color of withering leaves in autumn. Her breathing was slower now, shallow and fragile, like wind barely stirring through brittle branches. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She held my gaze for a long time when she saw me sitting beside her. Then she spoke, her voice soft, but steady.
"Xiaofeng, tell me the truth.
My breath caught.
Is there no hope for me?
Inside I had already collapsed, but I couldn't let her see it. I held her gaze, steady and unblinking, though my heart crumbled. "Mom, you'll get better," I said gently. Then I reached for her hand and cradled it in both of mine, stroking her fingers and trying to revive life. She closed her eyes for a moment, then whispered,
I trust you all. I have no worries. It's just, I don't want to leave you.
A single tear escaped from the corner of her eye. I leaned in, pressing my forehead gently to hers. I hadn't been this close to my mother in years. Then she raised one frail hand and, with infinite tenderness, began tracing the contours of my face, my brow, my cheeks, the bridge of my nose, and my lips. She hadn't looked at me like this in so long. She hadn't touched me like this in so long. For a moment, everything else vanished, the pain, the hospital, even the reality of death. She looked at me as if I were something precious, like an artist gazing upon their life's greatest creation. And then she smiled, that soft, radiant smile, content, peaceful, full of love. I couldn't hold back any longer. I kissed her forehead. Then I held her face in my hands and kissed her lips. I wanted to die in her place. Or if not that, then to go with her. I lay my head against her shoulder just as I had done as a child. She rested her hand gently on my cheek. And for that brief, perfect moment, we were mother and son again, as we were 20 years ago. Exactly as we had been in another time, in another life. Her breathing slowed. Then she exhaled a deep sigh, as if releasing every ounce of suffering she had ever endured. 2 days later, at exactly 5:40 a.m. on May 18, 1983, my mother took her last breath. She was gone. But in my heart, in my memory, in the marrow of who I was, she never left.